Hello, hello. So you saw the name of that. The name of this lesson is Trout Are Made of Trees. How can that be? How can fish be made out of trees? Well, we will find out and they are made of trees because it has to do with how everything is interconnected. All parts of our world are connected to each other in one way or another. So I'm going to start with a poem. April is National Poetry Month. So this is written by April Polisaire. And this is where the title of the lesson came from, because the title of this poem is called Trout Are Made of Trees. Trout are made of trees. In fall, trees let go of leaves, which swirl and twirl and slip into streams. They rush in a rush above rocks and over rapids. They snag and settle soggily down. Bacteria feed on the leaves. Algae grow, softening surfaces. Next, the shredders move in. Crane flies, caddisflies, shrimp, and stoneflies shred leaves. Rip, snip. They eat the algae-colored leaves, which become part of them. Meanwhile, predators are swimming and stalking. Crunch, there go the caddisflies. Munch, munch, there go the stoneflies. Now the leaves have become part of the predators. Trout join in. Swim and snap, fins flick, rush zap. They eat dragonflies, caddisflies, stoneflies, and minnows. The leaves have now become part of the trout. Tree shade keeps the stream cool for spawning. Female trout gather over gravel and lay eggs. The males fertilize the eggs. Here come the hatchlings. They grow up in a stream, kerplash, shaped by fallen branches. Trout are made of trees. So are the bears and the people who catch the trout and eat them. So you can see in this poem how it's just one example of how everything is connected in our environment, right? So you have the leaves fall and they decompose, and then the flies eat decomposed leaves and the bacteria that are growing in the leaves, and then the fish eat the flies, and etc. So really, the fish are very dependent on those trees. They're also dependent on them, as it mentions in the poem, because the trees shade the streams, keeping them cool enough for the trout. And it's a problem in some places where all the trees have been cut down and the water gets too warm for the trout or sometimes the salmon that usually spawn there. So it's really important to think about, all right, how would you think? You wouldn't think about how cutting down trees might affect fish, but it really can. It can really mess up their habitat. And that is because we're all so connected to each other, not just to each other as people, but connected to everything else out there in the world. So I want to show you an image that is a representation of how everything is all interconnected. So this was a visualization that was done a few years ago. But what it is, there was a project, there's a group of scientists and scholars studying the island of Manhattan as it was in 1609. And they started by compiling what the habitat was like at the time. They were looking at 1609 because it was a time period just before Europeans arrived to affect it. So they were trying to look at what the habitat was like before the Europeans came. And they came up with descriptions and species that were there of over 1,000 of them. And they put this into a database, typed it all up into a spreadsheet. And it's like a tree species might grow best in dry, sandy soils, or a warbler may eat tree insects. So they included all these things of the different species and the different habitats and put it all in the spreadsheet. But the spreadsheet didn't really show the relationships very well. So one of the researchers working on this, Chris Harrison, he created this visualization. He ran the spreadsheet through a process in the computer that visualized all these different points. So each of it's over 8,000 black dots on this map, and each of those represents a species or a habitat. And the lines between them represent how those species and habitats are connected to each other. So this image that it's called the Muir web. Often you hear about, like, the web of life and how we're all connected. It sort of ends up all these lines everywhere. It looks like a spider's web. It's often called the web. And they called this particular image the Muir web. And what's so fascinating about it is it looks like a sun, doesn't it? Which is so appropriate because the sun we're all connected to the sun, right? We all need sunlight in order to survive. We need it for food, but we also need it because it helps our plants grow, and it helps the trees grow, and we're dependent on the trees because they provide us with the oxygen that we need to breathe. So everything is connected, but the sun is a big part of that, right? So it's sort of cool that this image ends up looking a little bit like a sun. I sort of wonder what's going on up in the top right area there. There's some other stuff. But I think it's pretty fascinating. Now, this was named after John Muir. So John Muir was a pretty famous and well-known environmentalist, and so that's why it's called the Muir web. They named it that to honor John Muir. So think about how you're connected to other people, but also to animals, plants, and trees, and the very earth and the oceans around you. So, for example, think of your breakfast cereal. You're dependent on, well, food, the sustenance that is in that food, which includes maybe wheat. And that wheat was grown on a farm somewhere, some other place in the country. Now, that wheat needed sunlight to grow, needed rain to grow. It also needed the farmers to harvest that wheat. So you're connected to the farmers who harvested that wheat some other place in the country through your breakfast cereal. And the soil, in order for the soil to be able to grow the wheat, it needs all the microbes and everything else that's alive in the soil to create the nutrients in the soil that allows the wheat to grow. So you're connected to that wheat field, the bacteria in some wheat field and some Nebraska or something like that. You're also connected to, someone had to get that wheat to wherever the cereal was made. So you're connected to the person who drove that wheat to wherever the cereal was made. And to drive there, they had to use fuel. So you're connected to that fuel and everything that went into that process of fuel. So think about, even just in that one bowl of cereal, that's one little moment of your day, how connected you are to people, to earth, to the sunlight, to the rain, to all these different parts. It's all one giant ecosystem. So it's pretty amazing. So what I want you to do, you have an assignment this week, and you don't have to spend a long time on this, but I want you to create your own web. So put yourself right in the middle, and then you can do it in words or you can do it in pictures, and either write or draw things around you that you're connected to, and then around each of those things, write or draw what those things what those things need to survive and what they're connected to, and then draw the lines between them. Some things might come back, some things might connect in different directions, or maybe connect something all the way over on the other side and you have to draw a line all the way over. But so do that, and for just, spend, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes on it and see how many things you can get in that time that you are connected to either directly or indirectly, and all the other parts of this life on this planet that is connected to you. So I will end with a quote by John Muir, since the one who this Muir web was named after, a quote about this very topic of interconnectedness. And he said, "When we try to pick anything out by itself, we find it attached to everything else in the universe." So that is it for today. Have a great week. Be kind to yourself and to others, and stay safe.